She conquered worlds, but what I gave her made her eyes fill with tears. The unlikely ambassador. The transport shuttle hummed quietly as it approached the massive warship, its sleek silver hull gleaming against the backdrop of stars. Nora Winters clutched her seat, trying to calm her racing heart. 3 weeks ago, she had been cataloging ancient artifacts in the quiet halls of the Earth Historical Museum. Now, she was about to meet the most feared ruler in the known galaxy. "Remember the protocol, Ms. Winters," said Commander Duval, his weathered face stern as he checked his tablet. "The Vanturi do not appreciate idle conversation or unsolicited opinions. Speak only when spoken to, and for the love of humanity, do not try to be funny." Nora nodded, though her mind was elsewhere. How had she ended up here? When the government officials had arrived at the museum, asking specifically for her expertise on human cultural artifacts, she'd assumed they wanted her for a research project, not as an ambassador to alien royalty. "The Empress Zarithi has conquered 17 star systems," Duval continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper despite them being alone in the shuttle. "She commands a fleet that could reduce Earth to ash in minutes. This is not a diplomatic mission, it's a survival strategy." The shuttle docked with a gentle thud, and Nora swallowed hard. The circular door ahead hissed open, revealing a corridor lined with guards whose skin shimmered like polished obsidian. Their eyes, glowing amber orbs without pupils, tracked her every movement as she stepped forward. "Welcome to the Celestial Judgment," said a tall Vanturi female, her voice musical yet commanding. "I am Lyral, first commander to Her Imperial Majesty. You will follow me." The ship's interior was both beautiful and intimidating. Walls that seemed to flow like liquid metal, lighting that adjusted with each step, and everywhere, symbols that Nora recognized from the few Vanturi artifacts she had studied on Earth. They walked in silence through corridors that seemed designed to disorient visitors, until finally arriving at a set of massive doors that opened silently at their approach. The throne room of Empress Zarithi was not what Nora had expected. Instead of the ostentatious display of power she had anticipated, the circular chamber was austere, its walls displaying what appeared to be star maps of conquered systems. And there, seated on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single piece of dark crystal, was Zarithi herself. The Empress of the Vanturi was tall, even for her species, with skin that shifted between deep purple and midnight blue. Her eyes, unlike the amber of her guards, were a striking silver that seemed to cut through Nora like a blade. 4 elegant horns curved back from her forehead, adorned with what looked like constellations etched in precious metals. "So," Zarithi said, her voice surprisingly soft yet carrying throughout the chamber, "Earth sends me a keeper of old things rather than a diplomat or a warrior. Interesting." Nora stepped forward, remembering Duval's instructions to bow but not to kneel. "Your Imperial Majesty, I bring greetings from Earth." Zarithi tilted her head slightly, the constellation patterns on her horns catching the light. "And what else do you bring, Curator Winters? Your leaders have sent tributes before, weapons, technology, resources. What does Earth offer to the Vanturi Empire today?" This was the moment Nora had been dreading. The government had given her nothing official to present. In their haste to respond to the Empress's unexpected request for a cultural expert, they had focused entirely on protocol and forgotten the most basic diplomatic tradition: gifts. "I bring something personal, Your Majesty," Nora said, her voice steadier than she felt. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small object that had accompanied her through years of archaeological digs and museum work, a simple, worn compass that had belonged to her grandfather. A murmur rippled through the Vanturi officials watching from the sides of the chamber. Commander Lyral's expression hardened, clearly interpreting the modest offering as an insult. But Empress Zarithi leaned forward, her silver eyes narrowing with what seemed like curiosity rather than anger. "Explain." "This is a compass, Your Majesty, an ancient Earth tool used for navigation before digital technology. It was my grandfather's. He taught me that value isn't always in an object's appearance or rarity, but in its story and purpose. Nora held it out, the brass casing dull against her palm. It always points north, helping the lost find their way home. For a long moment, the throne room was silent. Nora could feel sweat beading on her forehead as the Empress stared at the compass, then at her. The Vanturi ruler's expression was unreadable, but something in those silver eyes had changed. "Approach," Zarithi commanded. On legs that threatened to betray her, Nora walked forward until she stood directly before the crystal throne. The Empress extended a hand with long, elegant fingers, and Nora placed the compass in her palm. Zarithi examined it carefully, turning it over, watching as the needle trembled and then settled, pointing resolutely in one direction despite being in a spacecraft thousands of light years from Earth. "In all my conquests," the Empress said finally, her voice now quiet enough that only Nora could hear, "across all the worlds I have subjugated, no one has ever given me something so honest." Their eyes met, and for a fraction of a second, Nora glimpsed something behind the imperial mask, a flicker of weariness, perhaps even loneliness in those ancient silver depths. "You will stay aboard the Celestial Judgment," Zarithi announced, her voice returning to its imperial cadence as she addressed the chamber. "I wish to learn more about Earth's cultural perspectives." As Nora was led from the throne room, she caught a final glimpse of the feared conqueror of worlds. Empress Zarithi was still studying the simple compass, her expression contemplative. And in that moment, Nora realized that her impromptu mission had just become far more complicated, and perhaps more important, than anyone on Earth could have imagined. A gift without purpose. The quarters assigned to Nora aboard the Celestial Judgment were unexpectedly comfortable. The Vanturi had adapted the space with what they assumed were human necessities, a bed with actual blankets rather than the energy fields they preferred, lighting adjusted to Earth standards, and even a small collection of objects they must have believed represented human culture. Most were hilariously misunderstood artifacts: a toaster labeled as ceremonial heat shrine, a basketball described as a spherical war token, and strangest of all, a rubber duck identified as a water deity effigy. Nora smiled despite her anxiety. It seemed the fearsome Vanturi, for all their technological superiority, had much to learn about humanity. "The Empress requests your presence," announced a voice, startling Nora from her observations. A Vanturi guard stood at her door, their posture rigid with formality. This time, Nora was led not to the throne room but to a smaller chamber with walls that seemed to display the actual space outside the ship, stars streaking by as the massive vessel moved through the galaxy. Empress Zarithi stood before this cosmic display, still holding the compass in her palm. "Your device," Zarithi said without turning, "it continues to point in the same direction, regardless of our movement through space." Her voice held genuine curiosity. "How is this possible?" Nora approached cautiously. "It's not pointing to Earth's north, Your Majesty. It's responding to the magnetic field generated by your ship. The needle always seeks the strongest magnetic pull." Zarithi turned then, her silver eyes narrowing. "So its loyalty shifts based on proximity and strength." There was something in her tone, disappointment perhaps. "Not loyalty," Nora corrected gently, then caught herself. Correcting an empress who had destroyed civilizations for lesser offenses wasn't wise, but Zarithi merely waited, her expression unreadable. "It's simply its nature. The compass doesn't choose, it responds to natural forces." "Like my subjects," Zarithi mused. She gestured to a floating platform that shifted into what appeared to be a seating arrangement. "Join me, Curator Winters." Nora sat, trying to appear calm despite the surreal situation. The most powerful being in the known galaxy wanted to chat about a compass. "In the 17 systems I have brought under Vanturi protection," Zarithi began, placing careful emphasis on the word protection rather than conquest. I have received countless gifts, weapons capable of destroying stars, information that toppled governments, treasures beyond imagining. She held up the compass. Yet none have given me something without purpose. Everything has purpose, Nora replied, just not always the one we expect. Zaritha's lips curved in what might have been a smile. Explain. The compass was designed for navigation, but to me, its purpose is connection. To my grandfather, to Earth's history, to the understanding that sometimes we all need guidance. Nora hesitated, then added, "What is the purpose of conquest if not to find something you're seeking?" For a moment, Nora thought she had overstepped. Zaritha's expression hardened, the patterns on her horns glowing slightly brighter. But then the Empress did something unexpected. She laughed. It was a sound like crystal bells, surprising in its genuineness. Direct for a species known to obscure their intentions behind pleasantries, Zarithi observed. You ask what I seek: order, stability, the chaos of the universe bent to will and purpose. She leaned forward. And what does humanity seek, Curator Winters? Your people stand at the edge of my empire, the last significant system not under Venturi influence. What drives you? Connection, Nora answered without hesitation. Understanding, knowledge for its own sake, the opportunity to be surprised by the universe. Surprised, Zarithi echoed as if the concept was foreign. Like finding beauty where you didn't expect it, Nora explained. Or learning something that changes how you see everything else. She nodded toward the compass. Or discovering that a simple tool can spark curiosity in an empress. Zarithi studied her with those unsettling silver eyes. You speak to me as if I were simply another being, not the ruler of the most powerful empire in known space. Aren't you both? Nora asked. Another silence fell between them, but this one felt different, charged with something neither had anticipated. Show me your Earth, Zarithi finally said. Not the diplomatic presentations your leaders send, with their carefully selected images of achievements and harmony. Show me what you value enough to carry across the stars. From her pocket, Nora pulled out her personal tablet, a simple device containing photos, music, and books she couldn't bear to leave behind. For the next hour, she showed Zarithi images of Earth's wild places, its crowded cities, its ordinary people. She played music, classical symphonies and pop songs alike. She read passages from her favorite books, explaining idioms and cultural references as she went. Throughout it all, Zarithi listened with an intensity that was almost unsettling, occasionally asking questions that revealed both her sharp intelligence and her fundamental misunderstanding of human motivations. Your species invests significant resources in creating beauty that serves no strategic purpose, she observed after Nora showed her photos of the Sistine Chapel. Beauty is its own purpose, Nora replied. It reminds us why survival matters. As their unexpected cultural exchange continued, Nora began to see subtle changes in the Empress. The rigid imperial posture softened slightly. Questions became more frequent, more curious than analytical. And most telling of all, the compass remained in Zaritha's hand, her fingers occasionally tracing its worn edges as if drawing comfort from its solidity. When Lyell, the first commander, entered to report on some imperial matter, she froze momentarily at the sight of her empress engaged in casual conversation with a human. Her amber eyes widened in what appeared to be shock, perhaps even concern. Continue your report, Lyell, Zarithi said, straightening immediately into her imperial bearing. Curator Winters is providing cultural context that may prove valuable in our understanding of Earth. After Lyell delivered her update and departed, a subtle tension lingered in the air. Nora sensed that their unusual conversation had crossed invisible boundaries within Venturi society. I've kept you from your duties, Your Majesty, she said, preparing to stand. I determine what my duties are, Curator, Zarithi replied, but her tone held no rebuke. Instead, there was something almost wistful in her voice as she added, "Few in my empire would dare speak to me as you have today. Fewer still would think to show me ordinary things." As Nora was escorted back to her quarters, she caught a final glimpse of the Empress of the Vanturi Empire. Zarithi had returned to the cosmic viewport, stars streaming past her regal silhouette. But in her hand, the simple compass still caught the light, a small piece of humanity held by the conqueror of worlds. And in that moment, Nora understood that her impromptu gift had done what no diplomatic mission could accomplish. It had revealed the person behind the power, the being behind the throne. The question now was whether that revelation would bring Earth closer to destruction or salvation.